Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your Hurricane Outlook and discussion for August 26, 2016. Happy Friday to you. Let's take a look at what's happening here with Invest Area. 99L, like I said in my blog, probably the most talked about area of investigation or tropical wave in the history of mankind. So you want hyperbole, there you go. What is it doing today? Well, this is really interesting. You can clearly see broad cyclonic turning in here, little lone thunderstorm up here on this band, and another band trying to develop, although some of this could be, I don't know, it's like a little band. Arc clouds, which are clouds that come down and away from the system, which I don't see too much of that today. Those are indicative of collapsing thunderstorms, and I don't see that. Not much of it at all, and maybe a little bit up here, but watch what happens. New convection forms along sort of that boundary, that outflow boundary. So in looking at this, considering what we saw last evening when this just kind of seemed to die out and look like it was going into Cuba, this is a marked improvement in the overall structure of the system. Again, this sort of broad cyclonic turning, the convective activity or thunderstorms developing, and during the daytime, nonetheless. Usually we've seen the thunderstorms developing at night, and then they dissipate during the day. So whether or not this is the beginning of something, or one last attempt at keeping everybody up late at night trying to figure it out, we'll just have to wait and see. But this is interesting, especially, I think the biggest thing to take away is the development of these thunderstorms during the daytime, and we'll just have to see if this persists. The vorticity signature is right on the money where we're seeing that convective activity. It's fairly round in nature. It's just not real strong, and we can see that easily on the satellite picture. The spin of the system and the overall energy and organization of it is not that strong. If you can compare that to Tropical Storm Lester over here in the eastern Pacific, that's what a well-developed tropical storm in the 850 vorticity field would look like, as an example. And the same with Gaston over here, but it has a symbol sitting over it, so I can't show you as best as I could with Lester. Also of note, and this is important now, this is the shear tendency map. See right there over the past 24 hours, and look right in here, -5. It's gone down about 5 knots over the past 24 hours. And so we're not seeing that blasting wind shear going across the system like we saw yesterday. And all through this region ahead of it, for the most part, wind shear values are holding steady. No marked increases. We don't see any of these shaded gradient areas just waiting to shred this apart later on. So maybe it's the beginning of this trying to organize, but I just have my doubts because most of the computer models don't do much with it. Certainly the GFS and the ECMWF together now really not developing this much. And when your two best overall global models, and they, usually the Europeans better overall on its skill scores, but when they don't show development in tandem, it's like when they both do show it, when they're in agreement, that means something. And they're not, they are not developing this. So I don't know. You have to kind of, like I said in my blog post, part of it's looking out the window and looking at the weather and seeing what's going on in front of your eyes. Well, today in front of our eyes, it looks like it's trying to get its act together. So we'll have to wait and see. We'll look at the GFS output that just came out in just a moment. So looking down the road for this system, again, it's sitting right here. Very high ocean heat content, and that's only going to go up. And if it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, decent amounts of upper ocean heat content available. So again, something to keep watching, but don't panic, don't worry about it. There was a couple of just ridiculous headlines in the news today with some print media. Will go unnamed. If you follow this close enough, you know what I'm talking about. And people just getting it wrong. I don't understand it. We don't have a hurricane, so there's no need for a hurricane watch. Let's just say that. So the ocean temperature is definitely warm enough. In fact, let's look at the anomalies part of my overall analysis today as we go through different aspects of the discussion. The beginning of the hurricane season, I really like to go back and see where it was and where we are now. So here's June 2nd, and so a couple days into the season. Pretty cold pool up here, drawing red, that'll help better. In the North Atlantic, this was starting to come along, and kind of warmish to coolish, whatever, off of Africa. Now look at what we've come to today. I mean, again, as I've showed this before, remarkable switch here. Warm, even warm in the northeast Atlantic, off the coast of the Iberian Peninsula right here. There's just no question that the Atlantic is nice and warm compared to where it should be. It's actually not nice because of what could happen with it, obviously, but you get the idea. These positive anomalies, departures from normal, on the right hand of the scale is more, on the left hand side of the scale is less. And you can see in the Pacific, the La Nina signature coming on stronger. Still technically not a La Nina, I've talked about that before as well. It all has to do with how long that cold anomaly is there, and we're not even going to get into that, but you can definitely see a pretty big change from the beginning of the season in the Pacific and the Atlantic to where we are now. The western and southwestern Atlantic are just absolutely ready to go if something were to get in there. And you know what? It's only the end of August. We have a long way to go. The Saharan air layer, pretty dominant right now here over the eastern Atlantic, but for some reason it is abruptly cut off here, and everything west of there is fairly moist overall, so nothing really in the pipeline. There are no tropical waves that I can see embedded in here right now, but some of this energy coming out from Africa over the next few days might try to develop, and we can see that if we look at the GFS, which is where I'll go next. So this is the 850 millibar chart, or about 5,000 feet in the atmosphere, and we are looking at vorticity. Again, that spin in the atmosphere, and there's Gaston, and this is a very small and weak area of vorticity in the Bahamas area, which is 99L, and you can see the outline of the lower part of this pretty stout ridge of high pressure over the Atlantic, and it's even thicker here, so there's more of it. So Gaston will just kind of go around that and eventually turn out to sea as this pulses up and down, and then we look for disturbances coming off of Africa. So this is valid tomorrow morning, Saturday morning. Here is Sunday morning and Monday morning, and you notice in the Gulf of Mexico here, really not much reflection at the 850 level in the vorticity field. That might be the leftovers of Fiona still, believe it or not. And there's Gaston working its way around that ridge there. And then we start to watch what happens over Western Africa. At 96 hours, here comes a pretty decent vorticity max coming out of Africa. We'll have to see where this hits the water. Ridge really starting to build in over the eastern Atlantic to drive this westward more likely. And then this should get pushed up and around the northwest side of this area of high pressure. Meanwhile, 99L is right there, and it doesn't look like much at all compared to the vorticity signature of Gaston, for example. Even the system over Africa looks a lot better organized, and in fact, by day 5, weak disturbance here, rainmaker, squally conditions maybe. Gaston probably a major hurricane. This strengthens even further the ridge out here in the eastern Atlantic as a system comes off Africa, loaded for bear, as they say, ready to head west for a few days. We'll have to wait and see if this is even there. Most of the modeling is picking up on it. And this gets us to the very end of the month. And, hey, if this comes off and this doesn't get named over here, if this is a no-go and this comes off and gets named before the end of the month, this would be Hermine. And that's how you say it, by the way. It's not Hermine or whatever. It's Hermine. So I wondered what it was, and I looked it up, and the pronunciation guide says Hermine. So maybe that becomes Hermine if this doesn't over here. In fact, let's just speculate, if this is a little stronger and it becomes Hermine, this would be Ian. Or is it Ian? By the way, this is the '04 list of names. They use the lists every 6 years and they recycle them. If there's a notable storm like Hurricane Ivan or notable hurricane, they retire it off the list. Andrew's been retired, Camille, Katrina, Rita, a bunch of them over time. And the '04 list of names got Ivan demoted. It lost its V, so now it's just going to be Ian. So funny how that works, isn't it? And in the '05 list of names, Rita was replaced by Rena with an N. Just go figure, right? That's the way it is. So we'll see what happens with this. If the Gulf system does, in fact, take this trend and do something with it, and it becomes Hermine, then the next one will be Ian. So we'll be watching for that. All right, I'm not too alarmed by anything right now. If that changes, I'll certainly let you know. Until then, don't worry about it too much. Just keep an eye on it and have a great weekend, all right? That's about it from me for today. Again, I'm Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks as always for tuning in. And I'll definitely be posting videos throughout the weekend.